The United Nations International Decade for People of African Descent was proclaimed by the UN General Assembly to be observed from 2015 to 2024. It provides a framework for the member states, civil society, and others to take effective actions in the spirit of recognition, justice, and development. Today, 200 million people of African descent live in North, Central, and South America, as well as the Caribbean. Millions more live in other parts of the world. The population of Africa itself is now 1.2 billion. The purpose of the decade is to strengthen actions and measures to ensure full realization of the economic, social, cultural, and political rights, as well as the potential of African people.
As the UN Ambassador of Goodwill for the International Decade of Peoples of African Descent, I implore policy leaders, policymakers, and fellow global citizens from all backgrounds to do the right thing and act, not just talk, debate, and issue formal declarations.
During the 15th century, the transatlantic slave trade violently displaced over 12 million African people. Between the 1870s and 1900s, Africa faced European imperialist aggression, diplomatic pressures, military invasions, and eventual colonization. The continent's immense natural wealth and human resources continued to be plundered in subsequent centuries. According to the United Nations, people of African descent constitute some of the most marginalized groups in the world. They also tend to suffer multiple aggravated or intersecting forms of discrimination. People of African descent have made enormous contributions to society. This includes inventions like the elevator, traffic light, laser eye surgery, open heart surgery, industrial lubricant, the wrench, street sweeper, fountain pen, pencil sharpener, and others. Many have demonstrated mastery in business, media, sports, justice, collective vision, leadership, and more. While people of African descent make up 3% of the population, they account for 10% of the Canadian prison population. There are 70% more Black Canadians in federal prison than there were 10 years ago. School dropout, lack of access to opportunities, anti-Black racism, and many other problems severely limit success. Local, provincial, and the federal government need to make a commitment to eradicating the roadblocks that truncate their progress.
Racism persists, yes, even in this country. That inequality lingers still despite the work done, and that is why we need trailblazers to team up with entertainers and young entrepreneurs to help others become agents of change, because there is still much work to do.
According to data from Statistics Canada, African Canadians are the third largest visible minority group with a population of about 1.2 million. Meanwhile, the second largest group of immigrants coming to Canada is from Africa. This calls for strategic action. Organizations like the Michaëlle Jean Foundation, Federation of Black Canadians, and others are all building solidarity in the community and with all people of goodwill to accelerate positive change. Future generations of African Canadians will continue to stand on the shoulders of trailblazers such as civil rights icon Viola Desmond, First African Canadian Governor General Michaëlle Jean, Lieutenant Governors Lincoln Alexander of Ontario and May Ann Francis of Nova Scotia, entrepreneur and philanthropist Michael Lee Chin, sports legend Harry Jerome, jazz pianist Oscar Peterson, the Honorable Dr. Jean Augustine, first Black female Member of Parliament, and champion for the recognition of Black History Month across Canada.
We have a moral imperative to stand, demand, and show what respect means beyond colorful words and formal declarations. Mass incarceration, lack of access to education, to employment, to healthcare, and to political decision-making categorized the fundamental injustices, all too characteristic of the treatment of peoples of African descent in America and throughout the world.
The United Nations International Decade for People of African Descent is a time for the world to reclaim its lost humanity, to right the wrongs of history, and chart a path of harmony and unhindered prosperity that will impact present and future generations.